I can just add a couple of things. In terms of the death that's going on, COVID-19 is actually, or should be thought of as two diseases. It's really an early disease and a late disease. The early disease is all about viral replication. You need to stop the virus from replicating. The way to do that is with hydroxychloroquine and zinc together. The mechanism of action shows that it works, and when we do it, it works very well. There are dozens and dozens of studies that show it work very well early, and there's no study that shows it doesn't work if you give it prophylactically or early. Prophylactic dose is very low. It's 1/7 of the regular dose we give for lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. Think of all the lives that could have been saved if we had used that. Prophylactic and early, 100% of the studies show it work. When you're giving it in late usage, there are some studies that indicate it does not work. All of the studies that show that there are problems with it have fatal flaws. They either gave too much of the medication, they gave it too late, or they gave it without zinc. This is only going to show that the drug doesn't work, but it's not actually studying the drug. They're actually doing poor science. They don't count. But even once you remove any late studies, even if you want to talk about the efficacy, you got to go back to the question of why are we even talking about this in the first place? Right up until the year 2020, this was a drug that your doctors gave you freely if you're going to go and take a trip to an malaria endemic region of the world. Now, again, COVID is an early disease or it's a late disease problem. In the early portion of the disease, it's all about viral replication, hydroxychloroquine, and zinc. In the late stage, it's all about cytokine storm, and that's when things like remdesivir come in. Who actually gets really sick from COVID? It's very well known. It's been known since the beginning. It's patients with comorbid conditions. To some extent, it's the elderly as well, but it's mostly people who have underlying conditions, obesity, diabetes, and serious heart, lung, or kidney diseases. Those patients do poorly. Even the CDC recently came out with the following statement. The CDC said that 6% of the deaths of COVID-19 are in patients without comorbid conditions. The average person who dies from COVID-19 has 2.6 serious medical conditions. This is very important. This is not a disease that all of us should be living in fear with. One more question. I want to encourage so let me get specifically down to Arkansas. Arkansas, like many states, instituted a rule specific to hydroxychloroquine and only the time of COVID. That really should not be done, and I hope going forward in a future pandemic, Arkansas will hold the line and not make new rules just for that pandemic. The rules are likely to be wrong. You should let doctors just be doctors. Arkansas came out with a rule, which it modified, but the current law in Arkansas regarding hydroxychloroquine is the following. Hydroxychloroquine can continue to be administered as off-label. However, we want you to be, basically they're saying they want you to be cautious, and nor is it reasonable to believe that the benefits outweigh their known or potential risks. I submit to you two things. First, don't make rules pertaining to a particular disease. Let the doctors be doctors. Because that rule, which was an improvement over your past rule, is still wrong. There's plenty of evidence to show that it works. You just heard one of the most famous people in the country say so. I could fill your head with all kinds of other data, but I'll leave you with one more data point. Countries and also states that use hydroxychloroquine liberally have a much lower death rate. This problem is almost exclusively a problem of Western nations, which are restricting hydroxychloroquine, Western Europe, Canada, America. In parts of the world where you can get chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine liberally, let me share with you the case fatality rates. In America, the case fatality rates are in the 400s per million. In Europe, it's about in the 600s per million. In Sweden, which didn't lock down, it's in the 500s per million. In slum areas that are very poor, in the poorest parts of the world, in sub-Saharan Africa, where there's no social distancing, there's no masks, There's no ventilators. But where there's an abundance of chloroquine, their case fatality ratio is less than 1% of ours.
Wow.
We see this all over the world, my friends. Everywhere you go.